edition of Thai PBS World, we are bringing you the latest update on the ongoing protest in front of the government house. Now let's go to our live feed from that spot where thousands of people have been rallying in the past 2 hours. So the good news is that there seems to be some small dialogue between the protesters and the police in charge of security there. And it looks like the protesters are on the verge of calling off the protest after submitting a demand to the police representatives.
Yes, especially when leaders have announced that it's like victory for them today, that they have already arrived at the government house and they have shown the letter to Prime Minister, which is calling for Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha to resign. But they insist that the fight or the mission of protesters have not yet finished. If the Prime Minister do not resign within 3 days, they will meet again and they will demonstrate again. So they will have to wait for reaction from the Prime Minister.
So they are folding up the banner which says, let's go home and come back again. So that's the means of communication between the protest organizers and the protesters. So the protesters declared that the mission for the night was accomplished after having submitted the letter demanding the Prime Minister's resignation and a release of all the protest leaders who have been taken into police custody over the past 2 weeks. And as you can see that the atmosphere has been quite cordial. And so what you're seeing now is what the protesters refer to as a copy of a resignation letter they drafted for the Prime Minister to sign.
Yes, and this is one of the demands of the protester that is calling for Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha to resign. And 2 more demands is redrafting of the constitution and reform of the monarchy. So totally are 3 demands from the protesters.
Receiving the protesters' petition, as you can see now on the screen, is Kun Prateep Kirati Rekha, a Deputy Secretary General to the Prime Minister, who came out along with senior police officers to talk to the protesters. So the atmosphere tonight was certainly different from previous rallies in which there was a confrontation between protesters and the police. But tonight there seemed to be some kind of agreement between them that they would be there meant to make their voices heard, submit their petition, and they would go home. And the protesters kept their words, and this was a scene that we taken earlier, but because at the moment most of the protesters have started to leave the scene now.
Yes, and this is what happening latest at the government house. At 7 p.m. tonight, the Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha addressed the whole nation that he preparing to withdraw state of emergency decree if no violence happened. And that's the message that the leaders of the protester announced to the protester when they arrived at the government house, that Prime Minister is preparing to lift up state of emergency decree. And about before 8 o'clock, there was royal order to have extraordinary House sessions on 26th of October, and that's another message that leaders of the protester tell the protester tonight as well.
So as you can see, the protesters are heading home after having accomplished what they believe to be the mission of the night. That is to make their voice heard again about wanting Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha to resign.
Yeah. This is the night that people will keep watching whether it will repeat the scene on 16th of October, the night that protesters were dispersed by high pressure water jet cannon at Rama 1 on the 16th of October. But obviously, as far as we can see tonight, protesters announced to go home after the representative from the police officer have already received their demand.
So finally, all went well and all ended well tonight.
But they maintain their demand that Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha has to resign, and within 3 days, if he doesn't respond, they will stage another demonstration.
It only means that the protesters do not attach much significance to the upcoming extraordinary parliamentary session to be held on Monday and Tuesday, because their basic demand is for the Prime Minister to resign. But General Prayut, the Prime Minister, insisted that the protesters need to listen to their elected representatives, that is the MPs, who will be talking about the conflict in the parliamentary session and try to come up with some solution in consultation with members of the Senate. So the Prime Minister believed that that is the most sensible channel to resolve the ongoing conflict. But of course, the protesters have a different idea about what they want to see.
Yes, so at 9:40, we could see how protesters at Makhawan Rangsan Bridge are dispersing and going home, but riot police are still stationed and have their own line at Ratchadamneun Nok, which is the opposite side of the government house. So the police officers are still there trying to keep the situation in control for tonight.
Okay. You have been watching a special edition of Thai PBS World, and of course,
Yes.
I believe that everyone is certainly can heave a big sigh of relief that everything has ended well tonight without any violence, not even scuffle. So you have to commend the protesters for being so orderly and being disciplined. They kept their words, they delivered the message, and then they started to go home now.
So that's wrap up our special edition for Thai PBS World tonight. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll keep you updated with our program again tomorrow. Thank you for watching, and bye for now.
Good night.